Good evening, morning, or noon, my fellow Tenno. My name is ClayXros. Now, I have been playing Warframe for approximately 6 months. In that time, I have gone through all of the story, but have only recently, and by recently I mean last week, at the time of recording, obtained Revenant, the Sentient Warframe. Now, in my time playing, I have come to enjoy many of the Warframe YouTubers, such as Triburos, Tactical Potato, and Brozime. One particular criticism I always hear them bring up regarding Revenant is that he very rarely, or should I say he does not at all, fit into the design ethos of what you would expect from a sentient Warframe. And to clarify just for a moment, I don't mean sentient as in self-aware like Umbra. I mean sentient as in the big bad organic machines in the sky who really want to make like Skynet and kill all human life and to take over the Earth to defend the Earth. At least, I think that's what Skynet does. I haven't really watched the Terminator movies very much. His 1 and his 3 are only vaguely sentient. His 2 is probably the most sentient about him. And his 4 also is, however, it has a bit of a wonky way in which it comes out. So, why am I defending him? Well, that's because I don't believe he is actually a sentient Warframe. I don't think he's even an Eidolon Warframe. I believe that he is actually a corrupted Eidolon Hunter Warframe. What do I mean by corrupted? And what do I mean by Eidolon Hunter? Well, let's go through each of his powers one by one, and hopefully I can get my point across without making too many heads hurt. This, my brothers and sisters, is a defense of Revenant. Now, first up, we have his 1, Enthrall. Note, I will be taking the descriptions off of the Warframe wiki for the sake of accurate descriptions for his abilities. Convert a target into a zealous thrall. Thralls turn on their allies and enthrall through damage. On death, they disintegrate into a damaging pillar of energy. The Thrall Horde remains under Revenant's spell until this ability runs out. Now, Enthrall does not really sound much like a sentient ability, and I would agree. In fact, I think Triburos put it best. Let's hear what he has to say, shall we?
However, that's not even my big complaint with this ability. As I said, a sentient design should not have an ability revolving around turning enemies into thralls. If anything, that's an Orokin aesthetic.
I would completely agree with this point. Mind control has always been an Orokin gimmick. But let's remember really quickly, who are the ones that actually made the Warframes? And who actually was fighting tooth and nail to survive the sentient invasion? Well, that was this Orokin, wasn't it? And did they not create Revenant to keep the fallen sentient down? We'll get into it later, however, I believe that this ability was originally designed to assist Revenant in hunting Eidolons to begin with. Remember that he was apparently the lone Eidolon hunter on the plains, before his fall. For now, though, put a pin in that. Let's move on to his second ability, Mesmer Skin. Become enveloped in sentient energy, which redirects damage and stuns all those who dare attack. Stunned enemies can be enthralled at no energy cost. This ability is probably the most like Eidolons that we actually have for Revenant. With the exception of the foot soldiers of the sentient forces, such as Vomvalists, Battleists, and Mimics, sentients have very potent shields. Heck, we can see the most recent, the Repopolist, I am never going to pronounce that correctly. Shields and damage negation is a major aspect of their kit, and for a sentient or Eidolon-inspired Warframe to have such an ability makes perfect sense. So instead of shooting the breeze with this one longer, let's move on to the real outlier of Revenant's kit, Reeve. Dash through enemies as a wall of sentient energy, leeching shields and health from any encountered, enhanced for thralls. Now, first and foremost, I have to resend my prior statement. This really isn't the biggest outlier, if anything, Enthrall is the bigger outlier, but it really doesn't fit with an Eidolon or Sentient kit to begin with either. Sure, Vonvolus and Battleists will charge forward during combat, but it really isn't unique. We have a bunch of units from the Corpus and the Grineer who also do so. The Orkin don't really count, and half of the roster for the Infected charge at you as well. The main gimmick with this ability is actually the sapping of shields and health, which really wouldn't help much unless you're out in the field fighting and hunting stuff without anybody to back you up, such as a lone Eidolon hunter would. Put a pin in this as well because we'll be getting back to it, but for the time being we should move on to his final ability, Dance Macabre. Erupt with a multitude of Eidolon energy beams and sweep a circle of death around Revenant. The beams will modify their damage type to target select defenses, while incoming damage is redirected back into the beams. Hold fire to boost status effects and damage at the cost of increased energy consumption. Thralls killed by this leave overshield pickups. This one really needs no major introduction or explanation. It's the most sentient and Eidolon ability that Revenant has in his kit. Heck, the only thing that really doesn't fit too much at first glance is that it comes out of his arm rather than he raises his hand and summons it from above. But Battleists use the same lasers and it comes out of their core, so it doesn't really even go against it either way. Now, I'm sure all of you are wondering exactly why this matters. Two of his abilities are sentient, two of his abilities seem to be Orokin, kind of. What does this have to do with anything? Well, my theory is that Revenant is not, in fact, a sentient Warframe. He's a sentient hunter Warframe, corrupted by the Eidolons that kept him locked away for so long. Do any of you remember the quest that you got your blueprint for Revenant from? It talked about what happened to him and where he came from. Kinda, well, not so much where he came from. You get what I mean, though. What his mission was. Well, I'm sure many of you don't recall, but I believe a certain little salesman who doesn't want anything to do with the Unum can explain things a little bit better than me.
This is where Gara vanquished the sentient, where its essence fell into the ground, trapped in some unworldly between. It wanted out. At moonrise, its ghostly tendrils would emerge, seeking form, seeking return. And this was the Warden, a Warframe. I can see it, like a dream repeating. The tendril emerging night after night, and the Warden night after night cutting it down. I see the tendril once again. Instead of striking it, the lost one, he extends a hand to the Eidolon? Kanong! The lost one, he's become an anchor for the Eidolon to pull itself into our world. He lets go, and so he falls from this world of the living and down into the next.
Now, there's a few distinct bits of lore that we learn from Nekak's dialogue. First, we learned that Revenant was older than the Sentient. 2, the Sentient, and thereby the Eidolons, are effectively undead? It's not exactly clear, but it probably has something to do with Oro. Third, we learned that Revenant himself was made to contain the Eidolons, alone, out on the plains night after night. And fourth, we learned that the operator in charge got a little too curious and forgot what the sentients were capable of. But how does this relate back to Revenant's design? I hear you asking me to get on with it. What this has to say about Revenant's design is that he was designed as an Orokin sentient Slayer. That's what Enthrall is. It allows him to take control of enemies, or, for instance, these floating Vombalists and Battleists who might be helping a downed Sentient. It also weakens them so that they're easier to kill, making it much easier to, say, take out the energy tendrils that Nakak was talking about in her vision. Then we also have Reeve. What it does is it lets him recharge on the fly using enemies that are around, like, say, his quarry, for instance. And he wouldn't need such an ability if he had teammates. But no, he was alone on the plains for Lord knows how long, until the Tenno decided to nuke their own Warframe. Sounds kinda similar to a lot of us nowadays. And, as we also saw in Nakak's account, Revenant got captured and dragged into whatever underworld that the Eidolons were in. But this is actually how he came to be with Eidolon abilities in the first place, like Mesmer Skin, of scaled down version of the Eidolon shields we always have to take out. And, of course, Dance Macabre, the sentient of all sentient abilities that still ticks me off with the Battleists to this day. So, to summarize, Revenant is not a sentient Warframe, even though D marketed him as that. I think. I've been told he's been marketed as that. Either way, conceptually, he is an Eidolon hunter who was dragged down by the Eidolons he so long hunted and corrupted and fused with sentient, Oro, soul, whatever you want to call it. So, by the time we managed to get around to saving his sorry rear end, whatever he used to be was long gone, and he was now this odd hybrid that was just kind of mashed together, or did its best to keep itself consistent. I have a theory as to how that even happened conceptually, but that's for another video. This is a Revenant concept video, not a general lore video, even though it kind of included it. As for actually making Revenant better, I'm not the person to do that. I don't play him nearly enough. I'd be better off trying to figure out how to buff Titania. Well, anyway, that's all I've got today. Revenant is a corrupted Eidolon hunter. All y'all on the forums, go nuts with whatever you want to do with that. My name has been ClayXros. This has been a defense of Revenant's concept, and I will bid you all adieu. See y'all in the relay, guys.